Welcome to Conversations with Counselors, a podcast where we hear what is on the hearts and minds of those who are passionate about biblical counseling and desire to bring the hope of Christ to those who are seeking it. My name is Curtis Heaton, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Biblical Counseling Coalition, an organization whose vision is to see every person in Canada have access to local biblical care and counseling. We do this by engaging, encouraging, and equipping the body of Christ for the work of biblical counseling. That's why this podcast exists, to encourage you and equip you. So let's dive in. Okay, I'm here with Milton Chan. Milton, it's so great to have you on the CBCC podcast.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks, Curtis.
So just as we get started here, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about yourself. Just let our audience know who you are, some of your ministry involvement, work background, things like that, studies, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So you said my name is Milton. I am in Mississauga, part of the Greater Toronto area, and full-time I'm a PhD student, PhD candidate now, just like our good friend and brother G-Min. And on the side, I also do counseling. So I do that through Luminix. So that's Luminix, which means light and present darkness, something I made. And so just counseling independently. So that's what I've been doing. Church, I go to church in Markham. It's a People's Gospel Church. So originally an ethnic, I guess, Chinese church coming out of those set of churches, and just serving in various ways over the years. Most recently, actually, I've stepped away from any official capacity, mainly to focus on finishing up the dissertation and other personal stuff. But I've been doing discipleship there for a long time. Most recently was co-leading men's group, so men's ministry. And yeah, I've just worn a lot of hats over the years, been there for maybe like 15 years or something like that. It's been a while. Yeah. Sitting on various committees. So just involved in various capacities, as the church grows, right? It's all hands on deck when it's smaller, and as we're kind of operating out of a school. Fun fact, we actually, shortly after COVID, when we couldn't have access to a school, we met at a movie theater.
Okay. Yeah.
It was like Silver City. So that was different. It's I used to sitting so high up to look down at the preacher.
That's right. Yeah, I actually years ago remember going to the meeting house, right? Like, so they were kind of the pioneers of that kind of church in the movie theater thing back in the day, and they had a couple of different locations across the GTA, and yeah, it was a different experience for sure.
Yeah. It's funny how the way what we'll call church for now, church is set up, can affect your experience of it. Yeah, that's
right.
So, on the family side, I am single, or rather unmarried. I'm seeing someone now for a while, and I have my parents and no siblings. So just
okay. Now, did you always grow up in the GTA area, or is that? I grew up in Mississauga. Gone to school there for all the way from kindergarten to high school, and then went to the University of Waterloo for. At first, I went for sciences. Actually, I was thinking I'd go and do some sort of helping profession, right? Some sort of professional thing, doctor or pharmacist or optometrist, or that kind of thing, where it was focused on helping people, but not really sure where that was going to go at the time. So maybe we'll get into that later. But yeah, other than there, I've lived in Markham for a couple of years, which is where my church is now. I've taken a job out there for a while. Otherwise I've been here. Okay. Very cool. So tell us a little bit about, I'd love to actually just dig into
kind of your journey towards biblical counseling and towards the studies side. So maybe if you just want to pick up the story there in university and like where God maybe started to stir in your heart for something different.
Yeah. But it's probably good to mention that, I come from a non-Christian family. So I was saved at the start of, or just before high school, right?
Okay.
So when we're talking about where does biblical counseling come up, right? And going to seminary for that, and there's like a family element too, but not in the way in which I came from a Christian family, but the opposite, right? So I think the inkling started in second year university. So I had actually began to switch into a psychology degree at Waterloo.
Okay.
The sciences weren't working out. I still love science, but when you're trying to go for these professional programs, the marks really have to be there. I, like many, struggled in the first year, and so it's like not looking so good on that front at first. But I liked psychology, reading it, and was good at it. So it's like, okay, let's see what I can find there. And at that time, I've been going to campus fellowship. So it was Chinese Christian fellowship at University of Waterloo. That's the English speaking one.
Okay.
I'd been attending like a home church in Mississauga, serving there as well. So, and I was living with some now, good friends and close brothers to this day while living in Waterloo, people I've met through the fellowship. So I think that was very prominent because we started to study the word together. We started to listen to sermons and just talk. When you're in that environment, you have a lot of time just together, right?
Right.
And so one of the, I'd say, good ways we used that time was even through the late nights, we'd talk about God, right? Talk about what we see in His Word, these ideas we were encountering. And when I say ideas, I mean theology. So that's kind of like a bit of the backdrop, but really the thought came about as I was reading one of my psychology textbooks, and reading, again, loving to read and loving to read this stuff, but then just getting that feeling that there's something missing. And I was kind of mulling it over, and I was like, what's missing is this consciousness of sin and God. I want to help people, right? That's kind of what was happening in my life. I'm trying to figure out what kind of career and profession and how to help people. And to me, the deepest need and help that people can get is what Christ can offer, and our need for Him. And none of the things I read really address that. It doesn't go far enough. It's like, and I think every Christian can attest to this, where, life before and life after knowing Christ is just worlds apart.
Right.
And there's, certain limitations, at least for a long time, about even talking about that when it comes to professionally speaking, right, in the world of psychology. So, and it's a different view altogether, and the theories and such. So, that was the moment where I was like, this stuff is great to read and interesting, but I think I'm looking for more, which isn't to dismiss it entirely, but to address how can I help people where I think that they really have the greatest need. But it wasn't until quite a few years later that I even discovered what biblical counseling was. I had no sense that such a thing existed, really, which led me to actually go into financial services after I graduated. Something totally different.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like a left field there, which we can get into. But for the rest of, in terms of undergrad, I just had this thought that, one day I will counsel, and marital counseling is like my main interest at the time and now. But I thought that maybe that can only happen after I married, after I have some more life experience. So I'm thinking like in my 40s, that I would actually go into counseling, and that I'd have to figure something out as a means to an end. And so that's when, after graduating or nearing graduation, you're like, what am I going to do? So I got to find a job, right? And so that ended up being working at like in a wealth management firm in Mississauga.
Yeah.
And that's through some, some connections, family connections, as many sometimes jobs come about.
Yes.
Yeah. Until I think a couple years into that role, I was in a long-term dating relationship, and that dating relationship was kind of reaching its end. And at the time, it's like figuring that out and realizing that, whatever I currently have is, in terms of figuring out, is not enough. I'm not sure, really. Part of that was a mix of, frankly, being in sin within the relationship, and another being, after putting years into it, I want to make sure that, you do whatever you can to make sure that you can salvage the relationship, or flourish again, or maybe call it quits. Right? Don't know, but don't want to be rash. So, but I had to admit and accept that I needed help, and that there was help. I had to find it too, and that's kind of a key moment, because as someone who wants to go into counseling, you'd think that you'd be open to counseling too, or being counseled, right?
Right.
But there's a sense of pride and shame and things that I was wrestling with, until I was like, okay, no, I do need to do this. I was much younger than I was than now at the time. But that became a pivotal moment, seeking counseling. And so did find someone recommended or by a friend, and it was actually through the counselor and learning about his background, having gone to Westminster Theological Seminary and CCEF, that I looked into. I was like, "Hey, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been looking for, right? Looking, not looking, but what I've been waiting for." Yeah, it was something where it was very much matching what I believed theologically, and also their approach to counseling.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
And took a class, right, while working in financial services, while working in wealth management, and was like, this is great. This is exactly what I hoped and dreamed for. And we can get into the content of that stuff, later. But yeah, that's how it began. And then I eventually would switch to full-time study and go from there.
So you did you end up doing the Master of Arts in Counseling at Westminster?
Yeah, I did. Okay. I did. So I was already thinking of moving to Philadelphia as I was looking at the program, but then they came back and told me, hey, we're actually starting the online for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I was able to be part of, I think it was the second graduating class, because the first graduating class was people who had already been in taking some of the classes correspondence.
Okay. Yep.
So it was pretty special to be part of that and to join in on that, which was all pre-COVID.
Okay. Yeah.
Like online education's kind of like not.
It's the norm now, right?
Yeah. Now, yeah. So I was doing that before it was cool.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Before we had to, right? Yeah.
Before we had to. That's right.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, what I love about these podcasts and hearing people's stories is just the similar threads that I see, right? Where, in your story, right? God stirring something, you've got a heart, obviously, for, as you said, when you were thinking about going to university, it's like, okay, I want to be in a helping profession of some sort. So there's a heart for people, heart to help. But then as you moved into that psychology piece, you're, again, the heart to help people, but realizing some of the things that are missing there, a hunger for something more. And then when you're in a time of need, God answers that need and then answers the other question, the other, piece of your heart that's been burning for something. I just think it's so beautiful, right? The way God orchestrates things.
Yeah.
Right.
In a way that only he could do.
Yes, exactly.
I certainly wouldn't choose it this way.
Yeah, that's right. But you look back and go, yeah, you can see his hand of providence, and that's so encouraging to hear. So through all of this, and maybe this is, I don't know how difficult of a question this is for you to answer, but I'm curious how your family has reacted to some of this as you've gone down this path.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll listen to this later. So
yeah,
so at first, I'd say at first there was some challenge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To be fair, my parents are like pretty open-minded, right? So, they, when I first came to Christ, it's not like I had a car, but I somehow had to get to church, right? Yeah. And so my parents were willing to take me to church. And at first, I was going to church in North York. And for people who don't live here, from Mississauga to North York is like 30 minutes. Yeah. 30-minute drive, right? And I'm like 14, 15, Yeah. So, and it was because I was saved at a summer camp, and I wanted to continue to go there. That's where I knew people. That lasted about a year. I only went to church like maybe every other week, because I had like English tutoring. So maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but often Chinese or Asian parents are rather they emphasize academics, and so So in since I was going for that, they're like, sure, we can take you to church. And then after about a year of that, God convicted me that it probably wasn't a good idea to go to church only every other week. I wasn't really growing with people, around me. And so God led me to a church in Mississauga where I could go, every week. So in other words, they're not parents who were restrictive.
Right.
In that sense, right? They, in fact, had taken me to church, I think maybe in like 5th grade or something, for a while. I had a friend there. And basically it's to learn to behave. This is a pretty common sentiment. It's for moralistic reasons, right?
Sure.
They can teach you good things.
Yes.
And so generally speaking, they're pretty okay with me going to church. Not as good when it came to getting baptized. That's just like a bit of maybe a longer story for my parents anyway. But until I was, 18. And then it was like seminary, right? That's a whole other.
Right. Yeah.
But then it was on the backdrop of my being in wealth management, where, you're kind of set to make some decent living.
Right.
And for my parents, I think they thought that, I was just jumping around. It's like psychology, and then there's doing wealth management for a couple of years, taking the licensing exam so I could, continue to move up. Right. And then now it's like, oh, you want to just throw it away?
Yeah.
Right. So they weren't too pleased with that. Right. Which frankly is not an uncommon thing that I've heard even among counselees.
Yes.
Figuring out what, they want to do or have been wanting to do when there's like family involved.
And I was, if I could just interject here, like I think even amongst Christian families and Christian parents, right? Like, it's not. I'm a dad now, so I know you have aspirations for your kids, and you sometimes live vicariously through them, for better or for worse, right? And so sometimes when you see them taking choices that you didn't anticipate, right? It's like, oh, sometimes it's like, how do I don't know how to deal with this, because this is what I'd hoped for my child, and they're going in a path that I didn't foresee. And maybe the challenge or encouragement for those that are listening, and this is a challenge and encouragement for myself, is recognizing that your kids ultimately belong to the Lord.
Yes.
And the Lord has he has a path for them. And what we see in Scripture that always fascinates me is that God's trajectory is rarely a straight line. It's often the winding road, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So with my parents, they didn't really start to come around until they were at my graduation in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So again, academics being important, so graduations being important, and so of course we can come down. We do this as a family, right? And it's great, but it's 2 full days of things going on, actually. So being, I guess, the first or one of the first online classes, they really took the time and effort to celebrate that. And given the opportunity for us as students to meet one another in person and each other's families and chat, because the experience of the student experience at least is we met over Zoom. Right. We met over Zoom to have these conversations, but now we could have a more extended time over those 2 days to actually be together and connect and talk, pray for one another. Right. So my parents were there, right, and seeing these speeches, and I think mainly what they said to me was seeing me interact with others, right, and then seeing that at least in their view is I'm more in my element, and that this is right. So that was a key conversation when they were sharing that with me.
Yes.
Because it shifted the tone going forward. Because as you know now, I'm doing a PhD at Southeastern, right?
Yeah.
This is another level, right? So
right. Yeah.
And for that, and when I was talking to them about that, right, this was during COVID lockdowns, they were very supportive. In fact, part of that was probably because they started to warm up to the idea of my doing counseling and biblical counseling. Yes. But also, my mom has a PhD, and so they've had to be schooling about it. So having a PhD was not a particularly lofty or crazy idea. Essentially,
right.
Growing up, it was like, well, mom has one, so it's like, it's not too out there. Though I'll admit that I never wanted to be like my parents. My dad was in financial services, right, wealth management, and my mom doing a PhD. I was like, I don't want to do either of these things. I ended up doing both. So it's funny how it is. And when you're talking about your kid's belongs to God, and God has the plan. It's like, yeah, he does, because it wasn't mine, man.
Yeah,
growing up.
That's right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So they've come around. They've come around, and they've over time tried to learn and understand. And I've had to be patient, learn how to explain biblical counseling and things to people who would not know all of the nuances.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. I appreciate you sharing that piece, and it's just very cool. Very cool to see how God's working, and the story's not done yet, right? So
yeah,
I'm sure God's got more to.
So yeah, I love my parents. Very supportive, and I'm thankful to God that I have them.
Yeah. I'd love to there's one little rabbit trail I wanted to go down, and that's I'd love to just hear a little bit of your story of how you came to Christ. So you alluded to it there, just that it was summer camp. How did that unfold? I'm always interested in I'm a big believer in summer camp because I worked at a summer camp as a teenager and saw kids come to Christ and just saw how impactful it can be. So
which summer camp was that?
Camp Minneowi in Huntsville area. So Muskokas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mentioned before that I'm an only child, and my parents are working parents. They both work. They're pretty career driven. So they got to dump me somewhere. Somebody's got to watch me growing up.
Pretty
much.
Yeah.
This is what it was. Your dad. So
yes.
So I went to a lot of camps. like summer camps, various camps, sports and science and engineering and computers and basic like things. And there was also church camp. And church camp came about because my uncle, so one of my mom's brothers, is at the time an elder of that church.
Oh, okay.
Church. And so they I believe they still have summer camps. That's the church that planted ours, and our church now has summer camps. But yeah, it was through going to that I was, I guess, more exposed to Christianity. And at that time, I had gone before. It's not the first time I'd gone to this camp. I'd actually gone a couple of years already. And my main desire for going was I could hang out with my cousins. My two younger cousins, we could play. Right? Yeah. We play video games, at night. Just after camp. But it's also fun to just like hang out and be together, and sleepovers, right? Kids love the sleepovers, whether we like them or not. That's So those opportunities, right? But this was summer before grade 9 high school, and some of the pivotal moments there was seeing just people's love and openness, other campers, even if they're from other places, other churches and things.
Yeah.
People are very warm and welcoming. I enjoy singing. I'm not good at it, but we did get to sing as part of the camp, right?
Yeah.
There was always that time of what we would say, time of worship, right? But I'd see these lyrics, and then I'd kind of be interested at who is this God that we're singing about? What is this all saying and meaning? And I remember the song that really stuck out was Chris Tomlin's "Forever," right? In that chorus, "Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever."
Yeah.
And I became curious about who that was, right? And it was an altar call thing at the end of camp, right? Where the camp leader's like, everyone close your eyes and don't look around, that kind of thing. And then presented the gospel, a very simple couple of lines. If you believe in Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, that He died and rose again in 3 days, then just raise your hand. And so I rose my hand, but then I put it down right away. I was caught on something, and what I remembered was my paternal grandfather, who had passed away like a couple of years before. And I remember that he had fallen, he had surgery, pretty common for elderly. He was in rehab, but then the day before he came out, we had visited him, but overnight he had a stroke. Wake up.
Yeah.
And I remember being at his bedside and seeing him like that, and just thinking that there was no God. How could this happen? Right? This was before summer camp, or that time in summer camp. But it was so fresh. It was maybe like 2 years out, or a year or something. So I remembered that moment. Right? And between that moment and sitting in the chair and putting my hand back down, I had argued with my uncle, who was an elder, about the existence of God. And I was like, as much as a 12 or 13-year-old could at the time.
Yeah.
And fighting him on that. But in that moment, sitting there and reflecting on my grandfather, I suddenly came to the realization that there was life and there was death, but that there was life after death. So I can't explain that. I can't explain why and how and the reasoning, but that came to my mind, and I believed. That really was the moment that I believed.
Yeah.
So I put my hand back up, and everyone open your eyes and raise your heads. And the camp counselor took me out of the room, away from all the other kids, to the side, and he's like, "Do you know what just happened?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You're a Christian now." And then suddenly I had all of these questions about God, the Trinity, Holy Spirit, the Bible. I was running them off, and then he's like, "Whoa, just slow down. We'll get to that." And that's how it began.
Yeah.
Yeah. From there.
Well, that's very neat. Yeah. Obviously the Spirit of God was doing something there in your heart. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing, I think, for us. And I need that reminder sometimes, because I've grown up in the church, and, so been exposed to it my whole life, but just to hear the stories and be reminded of the way God calls people to himself. And, like there was a moment there where, as you say, something happened, you can't totally explain it, but you believed, and, God stirred in you something. And it's just the encouragement for me, and I hope for others, is that you never know how the Spirit of God's going to stir in somebody, right?
Yeah. Maybe an aside, maybe not for some people, but definitely for those initial years of coming to Christ, I thought that I chose to be with Christ, but then, I told you about those years in undergrad where I was like, thinking through theology, and I was like, looking back even at my own experience, actually, I'm not sure how I could have, because just like I was telling you, I was fighting against him.
Right.
I was arguing against him. I don't want to. I would start to become interested and curious, but that's, to me now, I see that that's God's Spirit at work, working on me before that moment of salvation. So, setting that up, if you will.
Yeah. It's one of those great mysteries, right? Like sort of the effectual calling, I guess, is maybe the term for it, right? But very, very neat. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that piece.
Thanks for asking that. I love to share it, because that's God's
work. It's so great. Thank you. So coming up to today, kind of where you're at right now. So you talked about working in this PhD. I'd love to just hear, if you don't mind, why a PhD and why Southeastern?
Because G-Min's at Southern, right? And we're like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We joke about that, but we're really, it's like whatever.
Right.
Why PhD? So, like I mentioned, my mom had done it, so it wasn't like some crazy idea, right? Or I think some people, they might be more hesitant. I think it came down to me being certain that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Counseling, biblical counseling.
Yeah.
And I want to do it at the best level that I can, being the most equipped as I can. I think the particulars in terms of choosing when to do the PhD had more to do with the fact that it was COVID. And I was like, well, I don't know how long this is going to last. So, and I was just starting Luminix at the time. So it was challenging, right? Pastors, I'm trying to like talk with pastors of, and well, the main thing they're trying to figure out is, how do I have Sunday service? not how do I do counseling? And what is counseling? What is biblical counseling? So, for some people. And who is this guy? So I was like, okay, well, given that, it takes time to build these relationships and actually, find counselees to find me. And we're sitting here at home. I was like, how can I make the best use of this time? So that's like the timing of it, right? But the purpose of it was more to do with recognizing that, if I can say that I can do it, that I have the desire to do it.
Right. Yep.
Barriers were just less for me to do it. And so I was like, well, I want to be used by God, basically. And will they accept me when I apply? I don't know, but we'll just take a step in faith. So why Southeastern? That's a great question. Couple reasons. I think one, for anyone listening, whenever you are trying to go for a PhD program, the main thing is not the school, but actually the professor, the supervising professor that you'll be with.
Yes,
they can really make or break your whole experience, whether you're doing secular or not PhD. And so I was like, who then should I find, right? And the typical thing is to find someone who's like very much in line with what you want to do. But there's not a lot of PhD programs that do biblical counseling, Christian counseling, this kind of thing. there's none as far as I know in Canada. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm paying US dollar conversion too. So it means I really want it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So my professor right now is Sam Williams, right? And he did an article in the JBC, Counselors as Missionaries. And, I listened to, I had, in trying to figure out who he was, I was also listening to some of podcasts he's been on. And I was very intrigued, certainly by his compassion and love for addicts, as he would say. And that's, and not just the counseling side, but the personal side, but also his friendship with David Pallison. Hearing him talk about him. And so I was like, well, I want to be with someone who not just, is a good choice professionally, but also personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where the primary reason for choosing Southeastern was. But Southeastern as a school also, I would say, covers one of my weaknesses in that they are the most, among the Southern seminaries in a way, missiologically focused.
Okay.
That's that's the thing that they bring into all their classes.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. For me, I had never gone on missions. I wasn't particularly open to doing like missions, which I make a distinction between doing evangelism and sharing the gospel with people just around you, but more of the overseas or even local. Right, I've not really done much of that, though it is all very good. So I was like, this might be probably a good chance to be more exposed, and so it was definitely very, very cool, more than cool, to meet so many people. Of my colleagues at Southeastern who are missionaries or preparing to be missionaries, and seeing just, wow, I might not see these guys again in this life, but one day I will get to hear it all later. And it's just a great glimpse of that.
Yeah.
Southeastern.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I hadn't really thought about, just a few things you said there, just about, because we so often think about the school, right? And that's, I know it's a bigger thing maybe in the States too, where there's the prestige of like the particular school you go to, but thinking about it in terms of like, okay, because the PhD, I mean, it's, at least from what I understand from talking to guys like yourself and G-Man and others, that, you're working with this supervisor, and it's, it's really where it's the culmination of like all that you're passionate about and putting it into something that, is quite an achievement, really. So thinking about, okay, who are the people I really want to study under and rub shoulders with and get to know, and so I appreciate that perspective. I think that's really interesting.
And Dr. Williams is someone who's lived through the biblical counseling movement and has been very, close to it. I think he was one of the founding writers of the doctrinal statement for the BCC. Right? Okay. And for me, guy in Canada who is like a little bit further out and trying to get into this, it's being with him means I can learn from him. Right? I value the experience. So, I'm sure, other younger professors are great. But the advantage of having someone who's been there and near the end is that he's got such a long view back. And that's valuable for someone starting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. I think we all need to have that kind of humility to learn from those that have gone before, and to sit under them. It's biblical, right?
Yeah.
So you said you started during COVID, so you must be getting near the end now, I would assume, right? Or you're
yes.
I mean, can you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Lord willing. If there's the most common question that people ask me, it's, when are you finished?
Yes.
And they lose track of time because they're not the ones in it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. I should be done by next year, early to mid next year. I'm mostly in the writing stage now. there's some participants I'm still looking for, but so I had to fly back and forth during the course phase to go to seminars. Things opened up, I could do that. Going on campus, which was very essential, very, very good experience. And then after that, I can stay home and just plow at it. Yeah. And I'm sure you'll ask me what the topic is, so I'll just jump on that before you do.
Sure. If you don't mind.
It's about shame. So I know G-Min is also doing shame, but his direction is a bit different. Mine is more in the field. So I'm looking for human participants and talking to couples, specifically married couples. So I'm looking at shame in the context of intercultural marriage or intermarriage. So I'm looking for East Asian and Caucasian mixed couples, and trying to learn from them. Where does shame come from? What is the experience of that? What is that like? What did they do about that? How did they overcome that? And what goes into that? So I won't talk too much because I don't want to give anything away at this stage.
Sure.
But as far as what I'm doing and what I'm looking for, that's what's going on. And so it's rather a collection of different topics, right? Shame, culture, and marriage, which is, by themselves pretty universal.
Right.
Almost generic, right? When you look at each one, it's like as a specialization, it's like, it's rather broad. Once you bring them together, though, it certainly becomes quite specialized. So I'm some weird specialist generalist guy.
Yeah. Well, I'll look forward to seeing the results of that. And
me too.
Yeah, I'm become increasingly fascinated with this level of education. I don't know if I'll go down that path myself, but it's been neat to journey alongside a couple of you guys as you've been going down this path and watching some of the work going into it. And I just think I'm so excited that there's Canadians doing this, right? And what this means for the future of biblical counseling in Canada. So what do you see for yourself? I know you said you got a passion for counseling. Do you see anything else outside of, like, say, being in the counseling room as you finish this PhD? Like, any aspirations for other things?
Yeah. I mean, with the PhD, it certainly helps with counseling, and that, I think, in the short term, what I would focus on, certainly to get more and more years of that under my belt. But the PhD prepares a person for producing, right? Whether that means writing, even podcasts is a form of producing, right? But writing, producing some sort of content, but also people, training, teaching at seminaries, for instance. So those two things, writing and teaching, are certainly on the table, and it would almost be unusual if I didn't do some sort of that. Some combination of that going forward. When exactly, I don't know. I leave that to the Lord. But yeah, certainly open to it, and we'll see going from there. Yeah. But I'm gonna stay close by. Like I know others, right? Like my classmates and such. They see themselves doing that overseas, and as I mentioned, missionary and such, right? So. But I very much want to establish life in a local sense, and be doing most of whatever I'll be doing there, which doesn't necessarily mean at a local church. So whether I'm employed by a local church or not, I expect that I would do some form of counseling, right, there. But yeah, building up, especially if I'm in Toronto, let it be, Toronto, right, Canada, etc. So looking at it in that sense, the scope.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, it kind of leads me into the next question, as we wrap up here. Just what are you passionate about in the Canadian landscape of things? Because we're the Canadian Biblical Counseling Coalition, and passionate about this ministry in Canada and seeing it grow. What would you sort of hope to see in the days ahead? I see all the potential, right, with guys like yourself and G-Man, and there's others like, even some of our board members starting to move in that direction of doctoral studies and things like that I think open up some really interesting opportunities. So,
yeah. Yes, yeah, absolutely. There's a number of things.
Okay.
I think if I could sum it up, I'd say the ecosystem of counseling in Canada, biblical counseling in Canada. It's really important to raise up lay counselors, right? And I just mean anybody, really, members of the church. I think you were mentioning that in your talk at the end of the CBCC conference, and emphasizing that unity, right? So raising up them, but also recognizing there can be a professional element too, and that can be working in tandem for counselees, which includes the church. Yeah. And ecosystem being, all the different parts that come together so that people would be helped. And I think for me, with my PhD and my work, my curiosity has been in the culture and culture shifts. So to give you kind of a more clear example about that is, I was in LA a couple of months for an internship. It was like 2 years now. And one of the key things I was looking into was how the Asian American church has kind of grown and developed through generations, right? Because in the US, they're at fourth, even like fifth generation Asians, right? Chinese, etc. The immigration just happened there first, right? Compared to Canada. So they are ahead of us in terms of time, but we have a very different history as well. And so we can take some cues, but we have to figure it out for ourselves. What that means for working together as far as like churches, the Canadian Christian landscape, but also counseling as well. So seeing some, and actually even in the world of psychotherapy, right? Religion and multiculturalism. I think those two things are two of the fastest growing things topically. And we can, for us, biblical counseling, right? The religion part is already embedded. It's there.
Yeah.
But Canada being a very large country, geographically, physically, and also diverse in our ethnic backgrounds and histories, means that there's both a challenge to advance on in terms of unity, and seeing how God can come out in those things, right? There's the physical challenges of being far apart, but then the challenges of maybe being far apart in time and place where we come from, and yet God is able to and does bring that together. He certainly will, when we see him face to face in full, but we are still here in part to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's cool that you brought that up, because I think there's such an exciting opportunity. Canada has changed so much, even since I was a kid. And interestingly, I grew up in Mississauga. So,
okay.
I remember, my school days, growing up in elementary and then high school were, filled with friends that were from many different cultures and backgrounds. And so it's something I remember growing up in, but seeing the church now, like, especially if you're in, it doesn't really matter where you are, right? But I think about kind of Southern Ontario in particular being this place that draws a lot of people from other parts of the world. And seeing the landscape of our churches change, culturally speaking, we've got to think through some things, right? How we strive for that unity, how we work through some of those cultural barriers that can exist sometimes, whether we realize them or not. And I'm glad you highlighted that in the work of counseling, because the way I look at things from a counseling perspective isn't always going to line up with somebody who comes from a different culture. right? And it's good for us to be aware of that and think through that.
And as I'm born here, right? Born in Canada. My parents are not, and then my kids, presumably will be born here. But each of those generations have a very different perspective and experience. And cultural identity is a thing that I don't think. So I don't know if this is a hot take, but I believe our primary identity is in Christ, right? But I don't think that or rather replaces or completely replaces a cultural identity of sorts. I think we have to ask ourselves what it is, though, as we move generation to generation, and how Christ can be and should be and would be primary. But I think people kind of fall in different camps and directions, and maybe not actively thinking this, but moving away from their historical culture, overly moving towards it, right? So maybe in the days ahead, some conversation and thought about how one's own identity in relation to Christ and how they are different culturally, through generations. But at the same time, like you're mentioning, how do we interact with those who are different from ourselves? Even if we look the same, we don't look the same, but someone who might look the same. But you talk about Southern Ontario, which is maybe a hub of a mix of more cultures, but that's not all of Canada. There's a lot of other places in Canada, especially more rural places, that are not like that, right? And yet the experience of someone who might be an ethnic minority could be rather different in those parts. And yet we within the CBCC want counseling, biblical counseling, to be accessible to everyone everywhere, right? And so that includes further off places, and being able to see that visibly represented at the table.
That's right. Yeah. Amen to that, brother. And I'm excited to see and hear what God is doing in some of those far off places. That's even had a conversation this week with somebody who's out in fairly rural Saskatchewan, a place I don't know very well, but there's a work going on there, and I'm thankful for the way God is raising up people. And so thank you, brother, for what you're doing. Thank you for your passion. And I sense another podcast in there. Maybe we're going to have to dive into this whole conversation about identity and
maybe. I mean, I'd love to. Look forward to it. I'm sure there's a lot we could talk about, back and forth. And I guess last thing I'll say is that virtual counseling, has helped a lot of those people who don't readily have access. Right. You're talking about rural Saskatchewan, and I have, counseling from there. So it's possible because of the internet.
Yeah.
So that's like a good tool, where they might have to drive not 1 hour, but maybe 2 hours or more.
Right.
To see someone even close to this. Yeah. And that's part of it. Part of it has to just do with, this is life in Canada, certain parts, and we kind of do what we can. But I hope and pray that things would change and be better.
Yeah. I'm with you. Well, thank you so much, Milton. This has been awesome. Great to catch up with you and hear what God's stirring in you. And I am really excited for the days ahead for you and your ministry, and how we'll see the Lord use you in many different ways. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I want to remind you to go to canadianbcc.ca to find more ways to connect with us. Be sure to tune in every other week as we dive into more conversations in biblical counseling.